The stars were dying in Sector 7 Zeta. One by one, colonies burned. The Dravari swarm had reached the edge of the Elanthian alliance, and there was no stopping them. Entire cities vanished overnight. Crystal palaces turned to ash. Ships went. Silent, blackened in orbit, refugees cried out, governments crumbled, and still the Dravari came hive after hive, relentless, mindless, feeding on fear. The Elanthian Council had only one option left, one they swore never to use. Buried deep beneath the ancient capital of Zelari, a chamber sealed by 10 generations of Oathkeepers, was an object not of Elanthian design, pulsed faintly like a heart beating in a coffin. It was old, older than any civilization left standing, and it was human. Elder Savarin stood before it, his long robes torn and stained by ash. Around him, the ground shook with distant explosions. The shield dome would hold for only a few more hours. We said we would never call them, whispered High Speaker Vila, trembling. Do you understand what they are? Savarin didn't reply. He reached forward with thin, shaking hands and placed the activation crystal into the socket. The beacon flared to life with a low, deep hum. Not a sound, but a presence. Something ancient turned its gaze toward them. The Dravari were monsters. But what they had just awoken was something far worse. Far across the galaxy, on a planet lost to time, Earth's deep listening Post 7 came to life for the first time in 600 years. Machines stirred in bunkers buried beneath the Rockies. Red lights flashed. Eye cores blinked awake. Orbiting satellites turned their lenses toward the stars. The signal was clear. It was not a call for friendship. It was a cry for help. One Earth had not heard in a long, long time. Within hours, the Terran Naval Command was alerted. Dawn Europa. Station Admiral Vale was called from cryosleep. He stood before a council of generals and AI advisors as the signal played in the room, a desperate alien voice, pleading for aid, filled with terror. Vale said nothing for a long moment. Then he leaned forward. Who broke them? He asked quietly. A hologram of the Dravari swarm filled the chamber. Insectoid monstrosities. Winged and armored, devouring planets like locusts. The room watched in silence as an Elanthian colony fell. We have no current treaties with the Elanthian race, said AI strategist Vex 9. Responding would be unnecessary and inefficient. But Vale's eyes narrowed. It's a Deathworld signal they used. One of ours? That makes it personal. He stood, armor hissing into place around him, prepped the fleet. 2 days later, the black ships of Earth's first contact armada left orbit of Neptune, silent and massive. Each one bore no symbols, no names, only burn-scarred holes and plasma coils that glowed like the eyes of predators. They passed through jump space like daggers in the dark. No announcements, no warnings. Just movement, fast, final in the ruins of Zelari. Elder Savarin lay dying. The beacon had drained him. His skin flaked like dry leaves. But he smiled as he looked to the sky. Something was coming. Something old. Something angry. The last transmission from the surface showed the Dravari surrounding the shattered domand. Then the sky tore open. A black triangle descended from the clouds. No sound, no fire, just pressure, as if the air itself was afraid. From the base of the Terran dropship emerged 9 soldiers, clad in midnight armor, visors glowing red. They didn't speak. They didn't hesitate. They opened fire. Dravari screamed, screeched, burned. The humans moved like ghosts, efficient and brutal. Every shot counted. Every movement was practiced. Where they walked, death followed. One soldier stepped over the body of a Elanthian child and placed a hand gently on its head. Then rose and shot 3 Dravari through a wall. The beacon had been heard. Earth had come. But what arrived was not aid, was vengeance. From orbit, Admiral Vale watched the feed. His voice was calm. Deploy full ground units. Set perimeter. Burns. No survivors on Dravari's side. We're not here to win a war. We're here to end it. Behind him, a younger officer hesitated. Sir, the Elanthians? Should we open communication? A formal alliance? Vale turned slowly. Not yet. Let them understand who we are first. Let them see the monsters they summoned. Outside the command deck, hundreds of Terran vessels held positions, island, waiting, each one a blade, each one a warning. In the following hours, the Dravari invasion. Force was annihilated. The humans used weapons the Elanthians had never seen. Drones shaped like wolves, nanite clouds that devoured armor, gravity mines that collapsed enemy formations without a sound. The sky wept fire. Cities once thought lost were reclaimed in minutes. Elanthian survivors stared in awe and fear at their saviors. A young Eulanthian nurse, Sorel, recorded the moment she saw the human fleet above her world. They came like shadows, she whispered into her data recorder. Not with peace, but with rage. We asked for help. What answered was something else. Her recording would go viral in 1,000 systems by week's end, and all of them would remember her final words: the Deathworlders are real. Far away, in hidden corners of the galaxy, the races watched, some with hope, some with terror, because the humans had returned, and this time weren't asking for permission. They were answering a call, and they were angry. The Elanthian skies were no longer theirs. From every shattered observatory and blinking skyport tower, the people looked up and saw the impossible. A fleet unlike anything recorded in their galactic databases. No banners, no transmissions, just the black ships drifting above the ruins with the silent weight of judgment. Thick armor plating, angular designs with no curves or grace-only function. Behind them, the distant thunder of war drums that weren't heard by ears but by the soul. Admiral Vale stood aboard the TNS Vengeance, Earth's flagship, staring down at the planet below through a wide observation deck. His armor was still scorched from the drop on Zellerie, but his eyes were cold and clear. Tactical screens blinked in silence behind him, filled with data from scouts and drones. Status? Commander Ortega stepped forward. Primary landing zone secured. Local resistance swept clean. Eulanthians are watching mostly. They seem more afraid of us than the Dravari, Vale grunted. Good, let them remember who answered when the galaxy turned its back. A red sphere pulsed in its center. A Dravari hive ship, moving slowly through a nearby asteroid belt. What about them, still approaching? They didn't expect resistance so soon. We can intercept before they hit the next colony. Vale nodded. Then let's show them what answering an SOS from Earth really means. Down below, in the Elanthian capital of Vesker Prime, what was left of it, hundreds of civilians gathered. In the shattered plaza, statues of their ancestors lay in rubble. Fire still smoldered from the last attack. The people whispered to each other, eyes on the sky. Then, without warning, a low hum filled the air. Shadows stretched across the plaza. A black dropship, silent and smooth as obsidian, descended slowly and hovered above the cracked marble. It opened, 6 figures stepped out. They wore no insignia. No faces could be seen through their sealed helmets. The lead one removed his visor. Slowly, his human face pale, scarred, eyes cold as space. He looked at the crowd, then raised one hand in peace. We are not your enemies, he said. His voice was deep, metallic, filtered through a speaker system. You called for help, we answered, but we are not like you. No one replied. He looked around at the ruins. The ones who did this, where did they go? An Eulanthian elder, trembling, stepped forward. His voice cracked. They fled north. Toward the breeding pits. They will return in 2 days' time. They always do. The human simply nodded. Then we will be waiting. Elsewhere, on the moon of Selkarvi, the Dravari swarm commander thrashed in anger. Annihilation of their forward assault group. That was not possible. The Eulanthians were weak, soft, meant to fall quickly and feed the hatchlings. But now the swarms reported something new. Tall bipeds in black armor, now moving with impossible speed, their weapons cutting through Dravari exoskeleton like heat through wax. The commander chittered in fury. New prey had arrived. Back in orbit, Admiral Vale addressed his officers and AI advisors. "We don't just defend," he said. "We hunt. We don't wait for their next move. We strike now. Every swarm, every hive cluster, every breeding vessel, we burn them before they regroup. I want scorched rock and twisted metal. I want the name Earth to mean fear again." AI strategist Vex9 flickered beside him, its voice smooth and cold. "Data suggests that aggressive tactics may cause the Dravari to retreat entirely from this region of space." Vale cracked a faint smile. Exactly. The humans did not wait. By the next sunrise, black dropships poured down on Dravari-occupied zones. Drones swept ruins, scanning for heat signatures. Orbital cannons marked targets with red lasers that could be seen from the ground and, a second later, those targets were gone. Human soldiers advanced in formations never before seen by Eulanthian. Eyes, tight, fast, precise. No wasted bullets, no shouts. No mercy. In one battlefield, a platoon of Earth's shock troopers found a nesting zone filled with juvenile Dravari. The commander gave the order. No survivors. The mission wasn't just to win. It was to send a message. On Vesker Prime, the Elanthians watched the sky change color. The fires of re-entry lit up the heavens like a second sun. One child turned to her mother and whispered, "Are they angels?" Her mother held her close and said nothing. She had seen the old data files. Earth was not a place of angels. It was a death world, and the Deathworlders were here. Eulanthian diplomats tried to open communication with the humans. Quests for meetings were met with silence. One brave counselor transmitted a direct message to the forces of Earth: "We thank you. But we also fear you. Please, help us understand." They received only one reply. A single line of text. "You called. We came. Do not call again." In the dark beyond the system, more Dravari swarms gathered, unaware of what had changed. Unaware that they had stirred something ancient and furious. Earth was awake, and Earth was moving. The Dravari swarm descended like locusts, expecting screams, fire, and easy kills. That was how it always went. For decades, they had moved from one helpless planet to the next, feeding their hives with the broken remains of weaker species. There, attack ships, shaped like bone and muscle, pierced the Eulanthian atmosphere with a howl. Beneath them, the forests of Tersul burned with old scars. They expected another easy strike, scattered resistance, frightened civilians. Maybe a few pathetic defenses. What they got was Earth's wrath as the swarm dropped onto the ruins of Outpost V9. The skies answered with fire. A massive thunderclap shook the air, not natural, but artificial. It came from a human orbital cannon, silently hovering above the planet's magnetic line. The beam it fired sliced through to Dravari landing crafts before they even touched. Dirt. No warning. No countdown. Just destruction. From the trees came something worse: black-clad soldiers, camouflaged into the terrain, moving like ghosts, Deathworlders, Earth's elite. The first bullet cracked through the head of a swarm leader. The second bullet went through the carapace of a Dravari brute. The rest of the squad followed in silence, cutting down the invaders with surgical fire and terrifying precision. The swarm shrieked and returned fire green. Plasma bolts rained down across the forest, but the humans moved like liquid shadow, using terrain, misdirection, and brutal tactics the Dravari had never seen. One soldier climbed up a fallen ship and threw a cluster charge directly into an open hatch. The explosion was so violent, the blast waves stripped bark from trees 50 meters away. The Dravari had not just met resistance, they had met hunters. Back in orbit, Admiral Vale reviewed the battle footage with a still face. Tactical AI Vex9 marked each kill in red, each death in blue. There was far more red. Minimal casualties. Phase 2 deployment recommended, said Vex9 in its cold, emotionless voice. Suggestion: psychological warfare tactics commencing. Initiating audio broadcasts to swarm hives. Vale nodded. Let them hear us. Down on the ground, deep inside the jungle, A loudspeaker cracked to life and Old Earth War anthem began to play. Dravari soldiers, unused to such noise, paused in confusion. The song was thunderous, human voices howling with rage and power, backed by drums like marching boots. It echoed across the jungle like the voice of a god. Then came the whisper. New voice layered into the song. This is Earth. We don't come in peace. We come prepared. Back on Vesker Prime, the Elanthians watched the broadcasts in silence. Their cities were shattered, their skies dark, their hearts broken. They saw something terrifying. The Dravari, once their nightmare, were being hunted. Not by justice, not by diplomats, but by something far older, something Earth had been for millennia force of survival. In one transmission, they saw a Deathworlder approach a dying Dravari. It tried to crawl away, one limb dragging behind it, bleeding black fluid. The human knelt beside it and said 3 words, "You started this." Then he ended it. The Deathworlders weren't fighting for territory. They weren't here to rule. They had no flag to plant. They were here because someone had asked for help, and Earth had answered. But the cost of that answer was blood. Across the galaxy, news of Earth's actions spread fast. Some saw monsters. Others saw hope. On neutral space stations, alien bartenders turned off their music when Earth's name was spoken. Pirates abandoned routes that led near human systems. Old warlords whispered to each other, "We forgot Earth. That was a mistake." But in the Dravari hive clusters, fear was replaced with rage. Their commanders screamed in unison, calling for full retaliation. They had never lost like this, never been outmatched, never faced something that didn't hesitate. They rallied. Their remaining fleets, giant brood ships, hundreds of meters long, were pulled from deep space. Swarm troopers were forced to hatch early. The Dravari didn't care if they were ready. All that mattered now was revenge. Meanwhile, Admiral Vale gathered his senior officers. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun. "We hold this line," he said, pointing to a map filled with hostile zones and pulsing red sectors. "We show the galaxy what happens when you call us for help. We're not saviors. We're the reason monsters check." Under their beds, the officers nodded, their faces grim but proud. Humanity had finally returned to the stars, not with diplomacy, but with fury, and they weren't stopping now. Deep in the Dravari cluster, a moon-sized hive stirred. It had slumbered for centuries, coiled like a parasite wrapped around the gravity well of a dying star. There were no coordinates for it in any galactic database. No maps, no warnings. Just a region marked unstable and unexplored by most starfaring species. But the Deathworlders had found it. And now, Earth's war fleet was coming. Admiral Vale stood before the great holoscreen aboard the TNS Vengeance, arms crossed behind his back, studying the swirling mass of the hive world. It looked less like a planet and more like something. Alive black and red veins pulsing across its surface, releasing bioships from open, flesh-like ports. "So this is where it all began?" he said quietly. Vex 9 flickered beside him. "Dravari Prime? Their origin world? According to intercepted signals, the Brood Queen is here. If we eliminate her, the swarm will fracture." Vale's jaw tightened. "Then we cut off the head." Behind him, the command deck hummed with tension. Earth's fleet was larger than any ever seen. Dozens of capital ships, cruisers, stealth frigates, dreadnoughts, and carriers. Hundreds of fighter wings were prepped. Orbital siege cannons locked into coordinates. But even with all that power, they knew this wouldn't be easy. Dravari Prime was not a planet. It was a weapon, down on Vesker Prime. The Elanthians gathered around projection hubs, watching the human broadcast live. They had never seen war on this scale, ships the size of mountains moving silently through space, leaving ripples in the void. Children clutched their parents' hands. The elders whispered prayers. And somewhere in the crowd, one voice said, "What everyone feared, if they can destroy the Dravari, they can destroy us too." But the humans didn't send speeches. They sent a single warning. "Do not interfere. Stay off comes. Stay safe." This is humanity's war now. The first. Earth Fleet Wave hit orbit like a storm. Cruisers broke through the defense clouds, laying down suppressive fire. Swarms of Dravari fighters were met with cold, calculated resistance. Earth's drones cut through them like surgical blades, flanking and striking without emotion. The larger bioships attempted to ram the capital vessels those were met with. Nuclear-tipped interceptors that ripped them apart from the inside, but it was on the surface where the real horror-weighted drop teams of Deathworlders landed near the core hive spire's massive biological towers that pulsed with heat, light, and pheromones. The terrain was alien, shifting underfoot. The very ground fought back oozing tendrils, bioacid, and mutated creatures. Surged from tunnels, human infantry didn't flinch. They advanced with fire and fury, lighting the battlefield with plasma bursts and kinetic rail slugs that shredded exoskeletons like glass. Private Alira Zhang, just 22 and already on, her fourth deployment, kicked down a swollen flesh door and entered the hive corridor. The walls pulsed. The air smelled like rot. Her boots sank into something she didn't want to name. Behind her, her squad followed, efficient, armed to the teeth. They moved through the hive like phantoms, and then they found it. A birthing chamber. Hundreds of eggs. A massive Dravari matron. Her legs fused to the floor, spewing larvae into slime pools. Zhang hesitated for just a second, then her commander spoke. No mercy. They opened fire. The chamber screamed, back in space. Admiral Vale watched casualty reports climb. So did kill counts. The deeper they pushed, the harder the swarm fought. But it wasn't enough. 10 Dravari went down. The humans weren't just soldiers. They were legends in motion, cold, focused, relentless. But then the hive screamed, not in sound. In THOUGHTVEX9 froze. Admiral, we're detecting a psychic surge. It's not just instinct. The Queen is aware. She's speaking to the swarm directly. Vale's eyes narrowed, so she knows who we are. On the hive world, the Queen awakened fully for the first time in centuries. Her mind stretched across her children like a web. Her thoughts pulsed into the stars. You bring fire to my home. You bring death to the hive. Then come closer, Earthborn. Come see what true rage looks like. And with that, a new fleet launched from the dark side of the star. Thousands of Biodash ships, the Queen's final brood. Vale didn't blink. Redirect carriers. Form firewalls. Ready the Omega Protocol. His officers turned slowly. That's not authorized without Terran high commands. I'm authorizing it now. On the edges of the battlefield, Earth's most forbidden weapon lit up a deep space warp spike that bent space like paper. It ripped open a rift large enough to swallow a moon, and from it came the Black Sun, a planet cracker warship from Earth's ancient arsenals. It had only been used once before, and what it left behind was still quarantined to this day. The message to the Dravari Queen was clear. You started this. We will finish it. As the Black Sun charged its core weapon, the galaxy held its breath. Billions watched from silent stations and bunker cities. The humans were not diplomats, not conquerors. They were the last thing you ever saw when you crossed the line. They were Deathworlders, and now they were home. The Black Sun hovered in orbit like the blade of a god-silent patient, waiting for the signal. Its hull absorbed light, casting a shadow larger than cities. Even space around it seemed to tremble, as though reality itself feared what was about to happen. It had been forged on the most violent of Earth's moons, buried for centuries, and brought out now for one purpose: to end this war. Admiral Vale stood still. His command bridge bathed in red tactical light. Across the fleet, Earth's forces had shifted into full offensive formation. Dreadnoughts blocked incoming swarm ships with their armored hulls. Carriers launched their last remaining gunships. On the planet's surface, Deathworlder teams carved deeper into the hive towers, facing horrors no mind should ever see. But even through all the carnage, the Dravari Queen still lived. In the depths of the hive, her chamber pulsed with black energy. Her mind now stretched across the swarm, every fighter, every drone, every egg, all connected to her consciousness. Where once her commands were instinctual, now they were precise, like a military general who had learned from defeat. Her thoughts coiled around her children like armor, and she had seen the humans' methods. She had felt their fury, and now she struck back with pure, calculated rage. Above Dravari Prime, her new fleet launched from hidden tunnels. Deep in the crust, organic warships unlike anything seen before. They moved not like ships, but like predators. Their hulls could phase through light, bending around sensors. They struck fast, hard, and with surgical violence, unsliced straight through a Terran battleship, gutting it in seconds. Another attached to a carrier's engines and poured acid straight into the fusion core in under 5 minutes. Earth lost 3 capital ships. Vale clenched his fists. She's evolving. BEX9's voice echoed calmly, confirming a neural leap in hive coordination. They are learning fear.
Oh.
Vale growled. They're learning hate. On the surface, Private Elira Zhang's team pushed through the biotemple that sat at the edge of the Queen's domain. The walls breathed. Blood ran like rivers across the floor. They had already lost 2 soldiers. One was dragged into the hive wall. The other, they never found the body. Now they stood before the Queen's sanctum, a giant chamber, glowing with red and black veins. At the center was the Queen 10 stories tall, her body fused to the hive itself. Her face looked almost human in places. In others, it was pure nightmare. She turned her gaze toward Zhang and her remaining squad, and spoke. "You came to kill me?" Zhang froze. The voice wasn't in her ears, it was in her mind. "You think you are justice? You are the mistake." The Queen's psychic scream slammed into them like a wave. Blood dripped from Zhang's nose. 2 soldiers fell to their knees, groaning. The air thickened, shadows danced across the floor. Then the walls opened, and the Queen's final guardians surged in massive. 4-armed brutes covered in obsidian armor, eyes glowing red. Zhang didn't hesitate. "Light them up." Grenades rolled forward. Railguns hissed. The fight became chaos. Above, Vale received the signal. Zhang's team had engaged the Queen. He turned toward the black sun. Fire. The warship, silent until now, roared to life. Its central core began to spin. Rings around the ship rotated faster than sound, generating energy that couldn't be measured, energy that bent space itself. The weapon charged. But then the Queen laughed, and she did something no one expected. She moved with a tearing shriek. She pulled her body free from the hive-shredding tendons, breaking ancient biotubes and unleashing a scream that echoed across the galaxy. Rose. She activated her own deep core engine, embedded within the heart of the planet. She had become a ship, no longer rooted, no longer hiding. She was going to escape. Vale shouted, "She's moving!" Onto the signal. But the Queen's biotech cloaked her completely. She vanished from the radar. 1 second, she was there. 10 kilometers of living death, then she was gone. Back in the hive. Zhang and her team were thrown to the ground. The chamber crumbled. Chunks of the hive fell from above. The guardians died where they stood, abandoned by their Queen. But something else caught Zhang's eye. A chamber, hidden, sealed tight. She limped toward it, still bleeding. Inside was no weapon, no monster. It was a child, a small Dravari hybrid, with human features. Eyes blue, skin pale. Zhang stared. The Queen had been experimenting. Earth DNA, human tissue. A failed attempt at becoming something more. Behind her. Vex9 relayed a message from Vale. "Abort planetary strike. The Queen is gone. She's not dead." Zhang stood in silence. The child looked at her, confused but not afraid. "Ma'am," her cum crackled. "Do you see something?" She didn't answer. She only whispered, "It's not just war now." Far away, deep in a hidden system, the Dravari Queen arrived through a rift. Her body was broken, but her mind intact. And with her, she brought an army no one had seen. Hybrids stronger, smarter, built. From the DNA of the galaxy's deadliest species, including humanity, the war had changed. It was no longer about survival. It was about evolution. The silence between the stars was shattered, as Earth's war fleet tore across the black. Engines screaming like ancient thunder. 32 capital ships. Hundreds of support craft. Swarms of interceptors. They moved as one coordinated, relentless. Furious, the mission was clear. No more diplomacy. No more restraint. The Dravari Queen had fled with stolen DNA, and now she was building something worse than her swarm. Humanity wouldn't wait for her to strike. They would find her. They would end her. This was not defense. This was vengeance. This was operation. Scorched sky, Admiral Vale stood on the bridge of the TNS Eclipse, staring at the star map. A dozen wormholes flickered in red. Sensor ghosts, flashes of Queen's signature across deep space. They had chased her for 10 days without rest. Every time they got close, she vanished. But something had changed. Vex 9 had found a pattern. She's not just fleeing, the AI said, hovering as a shimmering blue sphere. She's laying breadcrumbs, false trails, testing us. Vale narrowed. His eyes, she wants us to follow. Yes, and she's seeding something behind her path. New structures, organic anomalies. Possibly birthing chambers, then we burn them. The Admiral gave the order. The fleet split into 3 tasks. Forces 1 to keep pursuit, 1 to destroy every site she left behind. And the third, the sharpest blade, would flank her next predicted escape route. The first target was a hollow moon orbiting a dead gas giant, tan artificial nest growing beneath the surface. As the Eclipse and its battle group closed in, they saw it. Dozens of spires rising from cracked rock, pulsing like living arteries. The Queen had made a womb from stone. Inside were the hybrids, grown fast, engineered to kill, and some looked almost human. As the fleet opened fire, the moon fought back. Living cannons emerged from the soil. Acid spores filled space like mines. Massive bioships hatched mid-orbit, engaging with suicidal speed. One hybrid gunship latched onto a destroyer. Ripping its hull open like paper and crawling inside, Admiral Vale watched the battle unfold in silence. Then he leaned forward. Launched the Thanatos Protocol. The TNS Medusa, a stealth dreadnought, carrying Earth's deadliest payload, decloaked. Near the moon's south pole, its rail launcher spun, glowing blue and with a flash. It delivered the Black Seta dark matter implosion bomb. The moon screamed. It didn't just explode. It collapsed into itself, swallowing everything hybrids, ships, sky, one enemy nest. Down. But it wasn't over. Back on Earth. Deep within the Terran Defense Command in Geneva, General Marlowe sat with scientists, watching new data stream in from the front. What disturbed them wasn't the Queen's new fleet. It was the DNA scans. The hybrids weren't just made from humans. They were made from specific humans. Former soldiers, pilots, scientists, some who had been declared missing in action years ago. How is this possible? Dulled. The answer was terrifying. The Queen had sent infiltration spores to Earth. Tiny, near undetectable. They had studied their prey in secret grown hidden bodies, now used that genetic memory to make super soldiers. It's not war. One scientist said, it's imitation. She wants to be us. Back in deep space, Zhang, now promoted and leading the 73rd Recon. Division received a covert message from Vex 9. Coordinates. A location not on any map. A star system shrouded by artificial nebulae. The AI had finally cracked the Queen's true destination. Zhang Vale said over secure line. This is it. This is where she's going. You have one mission: get there first and confirm if she's building her main hive. Zhang nodded grimly. Understood. Her squadron launched silently, using gravemetric stealth drives. The journey took 14 hours across uncharted routes, past strange ruins and silent stars. When they arrived, what they saw chilled their blood. Planet scorched and broken. Floating above it, a massive biostructure, larger than anything recorded. Not a ship, not a hive. A factory. The Queen had built a living forge. Churning out hybrid soldiers by the thousands, newborns fell from birthing. Towers like rain. Warships emerged with wings of bone and plasma hearts. The hybrids were forming ranks. They were preparing for something bigger. Zhang transmitted everything, and at that moment, the Queen knew. She reached out again, not with ships, but with thought. "You chased me through the dark," she whispered into Zhang's mind, "but you brought the fire with you. You made me this. You made us both monsters." Zhang gritted her teeth. "You don't know what monsters are." Back on the Eclipse, Vale saw the live feed and stood still. The decision had to be made. This was the Queen's final nest. "Ready?" "The fleet," he said. "No more strikes. No more waiting. We go all in. Call every ship from the colonies. All weapons. All firepower. Operation Scorched Sky ends here." The largest armada humanity had ever assembled began to converge on the Queen's final stronghold, not for survival, but for domination. The war wasn't just ending, it was about to change the galaxy forever. The planet was not on any star chart, not even the ancient ones. It had no name, its coordinates, buried deep in a coded transmission and wrapped in the Queen's pheromone-less language. The place was a scar on the galaxy, dark, hot, and pulsing like a living wound. The sky above it was green with toxic clouds, and the very atmosphere crackled with the energy of the hybrid swarm being born. This was no mere world. It was the center of everything, the hive's heart. Now, it was humanity's target. The fleet arrived with silence and purpose. Over 200 Terran ships formed a wall of metal and rage above the enemy world. Dreadnoughts spread out like steel leviathans. Swarms of interceptors spun in formation. Dropships waited in their cradles, packed with Marines wearing exosuits, bristling with railguns, plasma throwers, and sonic blades. Everyone knew this wasn't going to be a surgical strike. This would be a war of fire and blood. Zhang stood inside her gunship, watching the hive planet through reinforced glass. She had seen terrible things in this war city's melted ships. Consumed, friends lost, but this was something ancient. Something wrong? She could feel the Queen watching her, through the clouds and into her bones. "Ready, drop squads?" she ordered. "We're going in." The assault began with a precision orbital bombardment. The TNS Vengeance and TNS Reaper released waves of kinetic rods, massive projectiles, the size of buses that struck the planet's surface like gods throwing spears. Explosions rocked the atmosphere. Firestorms spread across the hive's outer shell, but the planet didn't die. It screamed. From deep within the living mountains came retaliation. Enormous wings unfolded from organic towers, and biocannons, the size of battleships, spat acid beams into the sky. Dozens of Terran fighters were sliced in half before they could maneuver. The hive's defense system wasn't mechanical. It was alive. Zhang's gunship punched through the chaos, weaving between geysers of flame and towers that moved like grasping hands. Her squad hit the surface hard. The moment the ramp dropped, the ground came alive. Hybrid soldiers, some 10 feet tall, others crawling on 4 limbs, rushed them in waves. The Marines responded with ruthless precision. Railgun slugs tore through bone. Sonic grenades turned charging enemies into mist. Zhang moved like lightning, using her exoblade to decapitate 2 hybrids in a single swing. But they kept coming. For every one they killed, 3 more rose from underground hatches. "This is worse than we thought," Hercom's officer shouted over the gunfire. "These things aren't defending a hive. They are the hive." Elsewhere, Admiral Vale watched the battlefield unfold from orbit. The AI Vex 9 ran simulations at impossible speeds. The Queen has created a distributed nervous system. It said, "The entire planet is a single organism. She doesn't live on this world. She is this world." Vale's jaw tightened. "Then we kill a world." He ordered the deployment of the Valkyrie Protocol, a final wave of antimatter torpedoes, and deep burrowing bunker busters designed to crack the planet open. But even as they launched, a new alert rang out. The Queen was talking again, not with sound, with thought. "You want to kill me?" she whispered, into the minds of every human commander. "But you already gave me life. You taught me war. fed me soldiers. You gave me Earth's rage, and now I give it back. Zhang staggered for a second as the voice hit her, not just speech memories. Visions of captured Terran soldiers fed into birthing chambers, DNA twisted. Voices crying, out in fear, and at the center. A hybrid child, looking almost human, looking like her? No. Zhang whispered, eyes wide. She used me. She copied me. One of the hybrids approached, but didn't attack. It stood still, its body twitching with restrained energy. Eyes were human. Zhang, it said, mother. She nearly dropped her weapon. It wasn't just copying her. The queen had made a clone, something between human and monster. And it remembered her. The queen had built not just a weapon, but a legacy. Zhang stepped back, raising her rifle. You're not me? No, it said calmly. I'm what you could become. We don't have to destroy each other. But the battle behind her said otherwise. Marines screamed. Explosions rocked the earth. The fleet was preparing its final strike. The queen was still alive beneath the surface. Zhang made her choice. She fired. The hybrid fell. Silent, she activated. Her beacon, target confirmed. Final strike coordinates locked, Vale's voice came through. We're ready. With that, the Eclipse fired its main cannon, something never used before. The Nova Lance. A focused antimatter burst that could bore through a planet's crust. The beam hit the hive core like a sun being born. The planet shook. The hive screamed. And the queen's voice vanished from every human mind in an instant. Silence, then collapse. The hive imploded in stages. Towers cracked. Mountains fell. The sky turned black. Zhang was pulled from the surface moments before the entire region caved in. Her gunship shot upward, trailing fire as the hive world burned behind them. But even as the planet died, something twisted in her chest. It's not just loss, doubt, because she had seen something in that hybrid's eyes. Something real, something human, and whatever the queen had started, it wasn't over, not yet. The hive world was gone. A blackened, broken shell drifted through space where a living planet once pulsed with alien life. The human fleet remained in high orbit, hovering in silence. Sensors scanned the shattered crust, searching for any last movement. There was none. The queen was dead. The nightmare, they believed, Admiral. Admiral Vale stood on the observation deck of the TNS Valiant, watching the smoldering planets spin below. His officers celebrated quietly, exchanging nods in relief. Billions of lives had been saved. They said Earth was safe again. But Vale didn't smile. He had fought too many wars to believe in clean endings. Victory always came with a cost. And this one felt heavier than most. Down on a research cruiser orbiting near the blast site, Captain Zhang stared through the reinforced window of a stasis chamber. Inside floated the body of the hybrid child she had killed, her clone, her mirror. It should have been burned like the others. But something stopped her. A moment of hesitation, curiosity, guilt. She ordered its recovery. Now it floated there, silent, its eyes closed. Not dead, not alive. Somewhere in between? Why did I hesitate? Zhang whispered to herself. The scientists had questions too. Scans showed something strange. The hybrid's brain was still active, barely. It was holding on. It's like a flicker of flame in the wind. The queen may have died, but not everything she created had died with her. Zhang turned to the lead xenobiologist, a man named Elias Rourke. What's it doing? It's thinking, he said slowly. Or dreaming. Its neural activity spikes whenever you're near. It's impossible. Not for this. She leaned closer to the glass. It remembers me? Grown from your DNA, Zhang. It knows your voice. Maybe more. Zhang stared at her reflection. What if it feels? Rourke didn't answer. Because deep down, he feared the same. Elsewhere, aboard a stealth corvette near the edge of the system, the AI Vexney ran anomaly scans on long-range transmissions. It detected something buried deep in the galactic noise, not a signal. A pattern. Familiar, organic. The queen's psychic frequency, fragmented but not gone. Pieces of her were still out there, drifting in encoded spores and half-grown hybrids. In the minds of the living weapons she had left behind, the message was clear. The hive is dead. The seed is not. Back on Earth, the United Terran Assembly convened an emergency session. Some leaders demanded every hybrid remnant be hunted and erased. Others urged caution. The war had ended in fire, but humanity had crossed a line. Had wiped out a sentient species. They had become reapers, not saviors. Zhang was summoned to testify. She stood before the council, battle-scarred and exhausted, speaking for the first time about what she saw in the hive world. She didn't just copy me, Zhang said. She learned from me. She didn't understand hate until she touched us. One counselor leaned forward. Are you saying we taught her war? Zhang nodded. We answered her cry for help with fire. She remembered that. Murmurs filled the chamber. Zhang continued. The queen is dead. But if her children survive, they might remember more than rage, might remember who we are. We did. A long silence followed. Then the vote came. Full extermination was denied. The assembly ordered a containment protocol instead. Remnants were to be monitored, not destroyed. Humanity would not repeat the same mistake, not again in the months that followed. The hybrid stasis pod was relocated to a secure lab in lunar orbit. Zhang visited often, unsure why. She told herself it was curiosity. But every time the creature's eyelids fluttered, every time its fingers twitched, she wondered, was it dreaming of her? Then, one day, it opened its eyes. It didn't scream. It didn't attack. It just looked at her. Zhang stepped closer. Do you remember me? It blinked slowly. Its lips moved softly. Yes, mother. The word echoed in the cold lab. Rourke gasped. It's learning speech. Zhang nodded, not breaking eye contact. No, it's remembering. The hybrid reached out, fingers pressed against the glass. Zhang hesitated, then mirrored the gesture. Two hands, one human, one alien, separated by inches of glass, but joined by something neither fully understood. A terrible war had ended, but something new had begun. Not peace, not yet, but the possibility of something different. Somewhere in deep space, among the ashes of the hive, spores drifted between stars, quiet and unseen. Seeds of something ancient, something still growing. What had started as a cry for help, what had turned into fury and flame, might yet become something more, if humanity could change, if they dared, because they were no longer just defenders. They were creators, and what they created next could save the galaxy or burn it again.